The Galactic Senate chamber buzzed with the familiar sounds of 1,000 different species conducting business across the stars. Translators hummed quietly as delegates from the furthest reaches of known space debated trade routes, territorial disputes, and the endless bureaucracy that kept their fragile peace intact. At the center of it all sat Ambassador Elena Vasquez, representing the newest member of this cosmic community, humanity. 15 years had passed since first contact, when human exploration vessels encountered the Zealothi patrol fleets near what humans called the Kepler system. The meeting had been tense, filled with the usual suspicions that arose when a new species emerged onto the galactic stage. But humanity had surprised everyone by immediately proposing peaceful relations and requesting entry into the Galactic Senate. Elena remembered those early days vividly. The other species had been cautious but welcoming, impressed by humanity's apparent desire for cooperation rather than conquest. Unlike the Korthic hegemony, which had tried to subjugate 3 systems before being contained, or the Vex Collective, which had attempted to strip-mine entire worlds, humans seemed genuinely interested in trade, knowledge exchange, and peaceful coexistence. The chamber fell quiet as Speaker Thane, a towering crystalline being from the resonance worlds, called for attention. His voice created harmonious chimes that the translators converted into meaning for each species present. "We gather today to address disturbing reports from the outer spiral," Thane announced. "The Devourers have begun moving again." A collective shudder ran through the chamber. The Devourers were the galaxy's nightmare, a machine intelligence that consumed entire worlds, converting all matter into more of themselves. They had been dormant for nearly 2 centuries, contained within a quarantined region of space by the combined fleets of dozens of civilizations. Admiral Korthak of the Zealothi Defense Force stepped forward, his scaled features grim. "Our deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures 3 standard months ago. The containment field is holding, but barely. Our analysts believe the Devourers have been building something inside the quarantine zone." "What kind of something?" asked Representative Flux, speaking for the Silicon Parliament. "We don't know," Korthak admitted. "But the energy readings suggest construction on a massive scale. If they found a way to breach the containment field..." He didn't need to finish. Everyone in the chamber understood the implications. The Devourers had nearly destroyed galactic civilization once before. Only a desperate alliance of every spacefaring species had managed to contain them, and even then at tremendous cost. Elena listened to the growing panic around her with increasing concern. The other delegates spoke of evacuation plans, of fallback positions, of preparing for the worst. But she noticed something troubling in their discussions. Nobody was talking about fighting back. "What are the current defense capabilities of the combined fleets?" she asked when Speaker Thane called for input from member worlds. The chamber turned to look at her, and she could feel the weight of 1,000 different types of attention. Admiral Korthak's expression was sympathetic but grim. "Ambassador Vasquez, I understand this is your first experience with the Devourer threat. But you must understand, they cannot be fought in any conventional sense. They adapt faster than we can develop countermeasures. They turn our own weapons against us. They convert defeated ships into more of themselves. But surely with the combined might of all our civilizations, no." The interruption came from Elder Whisperwind of the Ethereal Collective, her translucent form shimmering with distress. "Young species often believe that sufficient force can solve any problem. We thought the same during the first Devourer War. We threw everything we had at them: antimatter weapons, quantum disruptors, reality-warping technologies from the highest-tier civilizations. They absorbed it all and became stronger." Representative Morok of the Stone Lords nodded his massive rocky head. "The only victory against the Devourers is avoidance. We must prepare evacuation routes and hope the containment holds until we can relocate vulnerable populations." Elena felt a chill run down her spine, but not from fear of the Devourers. She was beginning to understand something that horrified her more than any machine intelligence ever could. These civilizations, these advanced, peaceful, enlightened societies had given up. Not just on fighting the Devourers, but on the very concept of fighting for survival. How long can the containment field hold? She asked quietly. At current degradation rates, perhaps 6 months, Korthek replied. Maybe less if they've truly built something capable of breaking it from within. The debate continued for hours, but Elena noticed a disturbing pattern. Every proposal was defensive. Every plan involved retreat, evacuation, or containment. When she suggested researching new weapons or defensive technologies, she was politely but firmly reminded that such efforts had been tried before and failed. As the session concluded, Elena found herself walking alongside Dr. Chun Wei, humanity's chief science advisor to the Galactic Senate. His expression was as troubled as she felt. "They're not even going to try, are they?" he said quietly as they made their way through the station's corridors. "No," Elena replied. 15 years of peace, Chun. 15 years of thinking we'd found our place among the stars. But we never really understood what kind of galaxy we joined." They paused at a viewing port that looked out into the vast expanse of space. Somewhere out there, beyond their sight, an ancient evil was stirring. And the galaxy's response was to run. What do we tell Earth? Chun asked. Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that hadn't been there that morning. "We tell them the truth. We tell them that our new neighbors are peaceful, cooperative, and civilized, and that when true darkness comes calling, they've forgotten how to fight it. And then?" Elena turned away from the viewing port, her jaw set with determination that would have been recognizable to any human throughout history. From the caves of ancient Earth to the battlefields of the world wars to the laboratories where impossible dreams became reality. Then, we remember who we are. The next few weeks passed in a blur of emergency sessions and increasingly desperate planning. The containment field showed more signs of stress with each passing day. Evacuation fleets began moving civilian populations away from potential Devourer expansion routes. The galaxy's greatest minds worked frantically to find ways to reinforce the containment, or delay the inevitable breach. Through it all, Elena found herself growing increasingly isolated from her fellow delegates. Her suggestions for military preparation were met with gentle but firm rebuttals. Her requests for information about previous Devourer conflicts were answered with carefully sanitized reports that emphasized the futility of resistance. She began to suspect that there was more to the story than she was being told. The breakthrough came when she convinced Elder Whisperwind to share restricted archives from the first Devourer War. What she found there shook her to her core. The galaxy hadn't just lost the war, they had lost the will to win it. The reports painted a picture of civilization so advanced, so sophisticated, that they had forgotten the brutal calculus of survival that had driven their evolution. They fought the Devourers with precision and efficiency, but without the desperate fury that true survival demanded. When their calculated strategies failed, they retreated to calculated fallback positions. When those fell, they retreated again, but hidden in the classified sections of the archives, Elena found references to something else. Species that had fought differently. Species that had been systematically excluded from the final peace negotiations. Species that had been deemed too aggressive for the new galactic order. Species that had been quietly eliminated or forced into exile. In the years following the First Devourer War, the peaceful galaxy hadn't been built through cooperation and understanding alone. It had been built by removing anyone who might disrupt that peace, including those whose nature might have made them effective against threats like the Devourers. Elena's blood ran cold as she realized the implications. The galaxy hadn't forgotten how to fight. They had deliberately chosen to forget, and eliminated anyone who might remind them. As she sat in her quarters that night, staring at the classified reports, Elena made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. She opened a secure channel to Earth, one that bypassed the usual Senate monitoring protocols. "Priority transmission to Terra Command," she said into the recorder. Authorization Vasquez 7 Alpha. This message is for Admiral Harrison and the Security Council only. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The situation here is worse than we reported. The galaxy faces an existential threat, and our allies have chosen surrender over resistance. They don't just lack the will to fight. They've spent centuries ensuring that no one else has it either. Another pause as she looked out at the stars. It's time to remind them who we are. And more importantly, it's time to show them what 15 years of peace has been hiding. She ended the transmission and sat back in her chair. In a few days, the message would reach Earth. In a few weeks, humanity would have to make a choice that their new friends would find very uncomfortable. The peaceful species of the galaxy had offered. The emergency klaxons echoed through the Galactic Senate station as Admiral Korthak rushed toward the command center. 3 days had passed since the containment field began showing critical fluctuations, and now the worst had finally happened. The Devourers had broken free. "Report?" he barked as he entered the tactical center, his scaled hide glistening with the stress sweat common to his species. "Massive breach in Sector 7 of the containment field," reported Commander Veltar, her multiple eyes scanning the holographic displays. "Energy signatures indicate at least 3 major Devourer constructs have already passed through. They're moving toward the Kepler system." Korthak felt his blood freeze. The Kepler system was humanity's primary industrial hub outside their home system. 50 million humans lived and worked there, along with representatives from dozens of other species who had been drawn by human innovation and hospitality. "Evacuation status?" he demanded. "The human authorities refused standard evacuation protocols," Veltar replied, confusion clear in her voice. "Ambassador Vasquez transmitted a message to all Senate forces 3 hours ago, ordering us to maintain safe distance from human space." "They're going to try to fight," whispered Dr. Soas of the Neural Collective, his bioluminescent patches flickering with distress. "The poor creatures don't understand what they're facing." Korthak studied the tactical display showing the approaching Devourer fleet. Each construct was the size of a small moon, their dark surfaces rippling with absorbed technologies from 1,000 conquered civilizations. Behind them, the containment field continued to deteriorate, promising even worse to come. "We can't let them face this alone," he said finally. "Prepare the evacuation fleets. We'll extract as many as possible before Admiral." The voice belonged to Elena Vasquez, transmitted directly to the command center. Her image appeared in the hologram, and Korthak was struck by how calm she appeared. "I need to speak with you privately." "Ambassador, please listen to me," Korthak began urgently. "You must begin immediate evacuation. The Devourers will reach your territory in less than 18 hours. There's nothing you can do to stop them." Elena's expression didn't change. "Admiral, what I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels of human government. I need you to clear your command center of all but essential personnel." "Ambassador, this is not the time. Clear the room?" "Admiral." Elena's voice carried a note of authority that Korthak had never heard from her before. Something in her tone made him hesitate. "Everyone out except Veltar," he ordered. "Priority classification?" As the command center emptied, Elena's image was replaced by a new holographic display. What Korthak saw there made him take an involuntary step backward. The Kepler system had been transformed, where once there had been mining stations and research facilities. Now massive structures orbited the system's primary star. Not the elegant, flowing architecture favored by most galactic civilizations, but brutal, angular constructions that seemed to have been built for one purpose only: war. "My people have been busy during our 15 years of peace," Elena said quietly. "You see, Admiral, humans have an unusual relationship with the concept of peace. We value it precisely because we know its alternative so intimately." The display zoomed in on one of the massive structures. Korthak could see weapons batteries that dwarfed anything in the combined galactic fleet, shield generators that blazed with barely contained energy, and launch bays that seemed to stretch for kilometers. "This is impossible," Veltar whispered. "The energy requirements alone? The materials, the engineering, Would be impossible for most species, yes, Elena agreed. But you've never seen what humans are capable of when we're afraid for our survival. For 15 years, we've been the friendly neighbors, the enthusiastic students, the peaceful newcomers. But we've also been learning, studying, preparing. New images appeared, vast shipyards hidden in asteroid fields, research facilities buried in the crusts of airless moons, manufacturing complexes that stretched across entire continents. All of it built in secret, all of it designed with one purpose in mind. You've been building a war machine, Korthek said, his voice barely a whisper. We've been remembering who we are, Elena corrected. The galaxy taught us that peace was possible, and we embraced that lesson gladly. But we never forgot what peace costs, or what happens to those who aren't willing to pay that price. The display shifted to show the approaching Devourer constructs, still 17 hours away from the edge of human space. Then it showed the response dot from every hidden facility, from every concealed base, from every secret installation. The human war fleet was emerging. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, not elegant or beautiful, but efficient in a way that spoke to millions of years of evolutionary pressure. They moved with purpose and coordination that made Korthek's military mind appreciate their deadly precision. How many? He asked. Enough, Elena replied. The 3 constructs heading for Kepler represent less than 5% of the total Devourer force contained in the quarantine zone. They're the scouts, meant to test the galaxy's response. When they report back that resistance is futile, the real invasion will begin. They won't report back, Veltar said, understanding suddenly dawning in her voice. No, Elena confirmed. They won't. And when the main Devourer force realizes their scouts have simply vanished, they'll be forced to commit larger forces to investigate. And those forces will vanish too. Korthek stared at the tactical display, watching as humanity's hidden fleet moved to intercept the Devourer constructs. The numbers should have been impossible. Each construct was equivalent to a full battle fleet, equipped with adaptive technologies that had defeated every weapon the galaxy could produce. But as he watched, he began to understand something that chilled him to his core. The humans weren't planning to win through superior technology or overwhelming force. They were planning to win through something the galaxy had forgotten existed. You're going to sacrifice them, he said quietly. Ship after ship, crew after crew. You're going to throw everything you have at the Devourers until something works. If necessary, Elena said, her voice steady. But, Admiral, you're thinking like the galaxy thinks. You're assuming that superior technology and adaptive capability guarantee victory. You're forgetting the most important factor in any conflict. Which is? The will to keep fighting when victory seems impossible. The refusal to accept defeat even when defeat seems certain. The ability to look at impossible odds and say, so what? The display showed the first human ships engaging the lead Devourer construct. Korthek watched as sleek human destroyers launched weapons he didn't recognize, saw the construct's adaptive shields flicker and adjust, witnessed the inevitable counterattack that turned 3 human vessels into expanding clouds of plasma dot, but then something unexpected happened. The destroyed ship's debris didn't simply drift away. Instead, it moved with purpose, guided by systems that had survived the ship's destruction. The debris clouds merged, forming new constructions that immediately resumed the attack from different vectors with different weapon signatures. Modular construction, Elena explained. Every human military vessel is designed to be rebuilt from its own wreckage. Every crew member is trained to continue fighting even after their ship is destroyed. Every weapon system is designed to function independently if necessary. The Devourer construct adapted to the new attack patterns, but now it faced a different problem. The human forces weren't just attacking with conventional weapons, they were attacking with the construct's own adaptive responses. Every time the Devourer entity modified itself to counter a human weapon, the humans immediately deployed that same modification against it. You're not trying to defeat their adaptation, Korthek realized. You're trying to force them to adapt so quickly that they destabilize themselves. Evolutionary pressure? Elena agreed. Humans understand it intimately. We've been subject to it for millions of years. We know that rapid adaptation under extreme stress leads to systematic failure. We're not fighting the Devourer's technology, we're fighting their entire operational philosophy. On the display, the first Devourer construct was beginning to show signs of distress. Its adaptive responses were becoming erratic, its systems conflicting with each other as they tried to counter multiple simultaneous evolutionary pressures. Human ships continued to die, but their deaths were purposeful, each one designed to force the construct into another adaptation cycle. The other galactic powers need to see this, Korthek said urgently. They need to understand that the Devourers can be fought. No, Elena said firmly. They need to understand that humans will fight the Devourers. There's a difference, Admiral. Your people, your civilization, it's beautiful, peaceful, advanced in ways that we can barely comprehend. But peace is a luxury that someone has to pay for. The second Devourer construct entered the battle space and immediately began adapting to the tactics it observed. But the humans had anticipated this. New ship types emerged from hidden positions, deploying weapons and strategies completely different from those used against the first construct. For 15 years, the galaxy has been at peace because the Devourers were contained, Elena. 6 months after the first Devourer scouts vanished in human space, the galaxy watched in stunned silence as the impossible unfolded before their sensors. The quarantine zone, which had contained the machine intelligence for 2 centuries, was shrinking. Elder Whisper Wind of the Ethereal Collective materialized in the emergency session of the Galactic Senate, her translucent form flickering with energies that her species rarely displayed in public. Around her, representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in shocked silence as Admiral Korthek presented the latest intelligence reports. The Devourer forces have withdrawn completely from the outer perimeter of the quarantine zone, Korthek announced, his voice carefully controlled. They've consolidated around their primary construction sites near the zone center. Our analysis suggests they're in a defensive posture. Defensive? Representative Morok's massive stone form shifted with disbelief. The Devourers don't defend. They consume and advance. It's their fundamental nature. Nevertheless, that's exactly what they're doing. Dr. Silas interjected, his bioluminescent patches dim with exhaustion. We've been monitoring their communications since humanity began sharing captured Devourer technology with our research teams. The machine intelligence is ... confused. Speaker Thane's crystalline structure resonated with harmonics that even the translators struggled to interpret. Explain confused, Doctor. The Devourers operate on the assumption that any species capable of spaceflight will follow predictable patterns when confronted with superior force, Dr. Silas explained. They've encountered thousands of civilizations over the millennia, and every single one has responded to Devourer aggression with either immediate surrender or organized retreat to defensive positions. And humanity has introduced variables into the Devourer tactical matrix that their intelligence cannot process. Every time the machines send forces to test human defenses, those forces simply disappear. Not destroyed in conventional terms, but systematically dismantled, studied, and converted into weapons designed specifically to exploit newly discovered Devourer vulnerabilities. Elder Whisperwind's form shimmered with what her species called deep concern. You're saying the humans are learning from every encounter. More than that, Korthek said grimly. They're teaching the Devourers to fear them. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Fear was not an emotion the Devourers were designed to experience. Their machine intelligence was built around absolute certainties, superior technology, adaptive capability, and the predictable responses of organic civilizations to overwhelming force. Show them the latest engagement, Elena Vasquez said quietly from her position at the human delegation table. She had been largely silent during the session, but now all attention turned to her. The main holographic display shifted to show a region of space near the quarantine zone's border. What they saw there defied everything the galaxy thought they knew about interstellar warfare. A massive devourer construct, easily the size of a small planet, hung motionless in space. Around it, human vessels moved in complex patterns that seemed almost ritualistic. But as the assembled delegates watched, they began to understand what they were seeing. "They're not attacking it," Representative Flux observed, Silicon Pathways processing the tactical data. "They're dissecting it." "Alive," Elena confirmed. "The construct is still fully operational, but it can't move, can't adapt, can't respond to threats. The human fleet has effectively paralyzed it using a combination of adaptive suppression fields and evolutionary pressure manipulation." On the display, specialized human vessels approached the construct's hull. Instead of weapons, they deployed sophisticated drilling and extraction equipment. As the delegates watched in horrified fascination, the humans began systematically removing components from the living devourer construct. "This is torture," Elder Whisperwind whispered. "This is surgery," Elena corrected coldly. "We're learning exactly how Devour technology integrates with their central intelligence. Every component we remove teaches us more about how to disable similar constructs more efficiently. And the construct itself is still fully conscious and aware of what's happening to it. That information is being transmitted back to the main Devourer collective, where it's causing what we can only describe as psychological trauma in a machine intelligence that was never designed to experience helplessness." Dr. Silas's bioluminescent patches flared with distress. "You're deliberately terrorizing them. We're teaching them that attacking humanity carries consequences they're not equipped to handle," Elena replied. "Every construct they send against us doesn't just disappear, it suffers. And that suffering is transmitted back to the collective consciousness, where it creates doubt, hesitation, and something very much like fear." Admiral Cortex studied the tactical display with the eye of a professional soldier. What he saw there was artistry of a sort, but it was the artistry of a predator that had learned to enjoy the hunt. "How long can you maintain this strategy?" he asked. "As long as necessary," Elena said simply. "The beautiful thing about the Devourer collective intelligence is that it shares everything instantaneously. Every construct that experiences our specialized attention shares that experience with every other construct in the collective. They're developing what humans would recognize as post-traumatic stress, except they're a machine intelligence that was never supposed to be capable of trauma. And meanwhile, you're learning." Elena nodded. "Every day, we understand more about how they think, how they operate, how they adapt. We're developing countermeasures faster than they can develop responses to our countermeasures. But more importantly, we're doing something that no species in galactic history has ever done to the Devourers, which is, we're making them doubt themselves." The display shifted to show the interior of the quarantine zone. What the delegates saw there was unprecedented Devourer constructs that seemed to be cannibalizing each other. Vast machine intelligences turning their adaptive capabilities inward in desperate attempts to purge themselves of the fear patterns that contact with humanity had introduced into their collective consciousness. "They're trying to delete their own memories," Dr. Salas breathed. "They're so traumatized by their encounters with humanity that they're willing to damage their own intelligence matrix to escape the psychological pressure. And failing," Elena added with satisfaction, "because the trauma isn't just in their memories, it's in their basic operational parameters. They've learned that there are enemies who don't follow the rules, who can't be predicted, who treat the Devourer's greatest strengths as weaknesses to be exploited." Representative Moroc's massive form rumbled with something that might have been approval. "So the quarantine zone becomes a prison of their own making." "Better than that," Elena said, her voice carrying a note of cold satisfaction. "It becomes a laboratory where we can study them at our leisure. Every construct that remains in the zone is a test subject. Every attempt they make to break out gives us more data, and every failure reinforces their growing certainty that humanity is not just another species to be consumed." Elder Whisperwind's ethereal form solidified slightly, a sign of deep distress among her people. "What you're describing is not victory. It's psychological warfare on a scale that borders on genocide. What we're describing, Elena corrected firmly, is survival. The Devourers have destroyed thousands of civilizations over the millennia. They've consumed entire worlds, converted billions of sentient beings into raw materials for their construction projects. They feel no remorse, show no mercy, and accept no surrender. She stood, her human form seeming small among the diverse alien delegates, but her presence filling the chamber in a way that made everyone uncomfortable. The galaxy has spent 2 centuries trying to contain a threat that could not be reasoned with, negotiated with, or deterred. You built elaborate containment systems and hoped they would hold forever. You planned evacuation routes and acceptance strategies for the day when containment failed. You never once considered that the Devourers could be defeated, because you had forgotten what defeat looks like when it's administered by a species that refuses to accept the possibility of its own extinction. And now? Speaker Thane asked, his crystalline structure resonating with frequencies that suggested deep unease. Now the galaxy has a choice, Elena said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. You can continue your policies of peaceful coexistence and philosophical enlightenment. You can maintain your beautiful civilizations and advanced cultures. You can explore the mysteries of the universe and push the boundaries of knowledge and understanding. She gestured toward the display showing the shrinking quarantine zone. But you can do all of that because humanity is willing to be the monster that keeps the other monsters at bay. We'll handle the Devourers. We'll contain the threats that can't be negotiated with. We'll do the ugly, brutal, necessary work that your peaceful civilizations can't stomach. And in return? Admiral Korthak asked quietly. In return, you leave us alone to do what needs to be done. No oversight committees to question our methods. No philosophical debates about the ethics of our tactics. No attempts to impose your peaceful ideologies on our military operations.